The medallion should never have fallen out. Lila Monroe froze as the polished metal clinked onto her workbench, its secret inscription glinting under the harsh lights. Sergeant Adrian Cortez picked it up before she could stop him. His hands trembled as he read the numbers that weren't supposed to exist, numbers that would change everything. Numbers that proved the quiet woman who never talked about her past wasn't who she claimed to be. Lila Monroe's fingers moved across the Barrett M107's components with surgical precision, each movement economical and sure. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the armory basement of Camp Harrison, casting harsh shadows across weapon racks that stretched like metallic ribs from floor to ceiling. At 32, Lila possessed the kind of forgettable appearance that made people struggle to recall her face minutes after meeting her. Average height, dark brown hair pulled into a regulation bun, hands that spoke in the quiet language of tools rather than words. She'd been working the armory for 2 years since her transfer from what her personnel file vaguely described as overseas logistics support. Sergeant Adrian Cortez approached her station, dragging a rifle case that had clearly seen better decades. "Monroe, need this beast ready by 0400 hours," he said, dropping the case beside her bench with a metallic thud. "Bolts seized tighter than Fort Knox, and the brass wants it perfect for tomorrow's VIP demonstration." Lila glanced up from the M4 she'd been reassembling, her dark eyes taking in the battered case without visible emotion. "No problem, Sergeant. Should have it singing by noon." The moment Cortez's boots disappeared up the concrete stairs, Lila opened the rifle case with movements that seemed almost reverent. The Barrett M107 lay nestled in foam padding, its massive frame designed to reach across impossible distances. She lifted the rifle with both hands, feeling the familiar weight distribution that triggered muscle memory from places she tried not to visit during daylight hours. The weapon was indeed jammed, its bolt frozen between positions. Lila carried it to her workbench and began field stripping the rifle with movements that flowed like water. Her hands found receiver pins without looking, fingers dancing across surfaces most armory techs would approach with manual in hand. As she worked, Lila felt the familiar meditation that came with mechanical precision. The jam was caused by carbon buildup, a bent extractor, and desert sand that had somehow found its way into the receiver, despite this weapon supposedly never leaving Texas soil. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Military records were often creative fiction. While reassembling the rifle's trigger group, Lila reached for her compact cleaning kit, a leather case containing specialized tools accumulated over years of service. She thumbed open the brass clasps and lifted the lid. A polished medallion tumbled out onto the workbench with a soft chime. Lila froze, her hands hovering as if she'd uncovered a coiled rattlesnake. The medallion lay face up, its silver finish reflecting the fluorescent lighting, roughly the size of a silver dollar, with intricate engravings marking it as something official, something important. The inscription in the center made her stomach clench. 318 confirmed eliminations. Below the number was a crosshair symbol with a single star, the mark of Task Force Wraith, a unit that existed in budget line items and nowhere else. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, Cortez returning. Lila had maybe 10 seconds before he'd see her workstation clearly. Her fingers closed around the medallion, feeling its familiar weight. For a moment, she was transported back to when such tokens meant achievement rather than burden. The medallion had been presented in a ceremony that never officially happened, recognizing service that would never appear in public records. By the time Cortez reached her station, she'd slipped it back in her kit, appearing to focus entirely on the Barrett's receiver. "How's it coming, Monroe?" Cortez asked, leaning against her workbench. "Just carbon buildup and some sand. Someone's been taking this rifle places it's not supposed to go," Lila replied without looking up. Cortez frowned, According to paperwork, the Barrett had never left the armory except for local training, but Monroe had a reputation for finding problems others missed. "Any idea how long since proper maintenance?" he asked. Lila examined the barrel where wear patterns told stories to those who knew how to read them. This barrel had stories written in carbon scoring that spoke of extensive combat use. At least 8 months, maybe longer based on wear patterns. After Cortez left, Lila continued working, but her mind was no longer focused entirely on mechanics. The medallion's appearance had cracked open doors in her memory she'd spent 2 years learning to keep closed. She remembered the first time she held the Barrett in combat conditions, its weight different when lives hung in the balance. The rifle had been her constant companion through 14 months of operations in countries that didn't appear on mission reports. She learned to read wind patterns like scripture, calculating bullet drop across distances that pushed human skill and mechanical precision to their limits. The medallion represented 318 threats neutralized, 318 missions completed, 318 reasons teammates came home alive. It also meant 318 faces that visited her dreams. Lila had reached a point where accumulated success became heavier than she could carry. Psychological evaluations found no PTSD, no breakdown. Instead, something more troubling. Complete emotional detachment from violence, clinical precision that had replaced normal human responses. She turned down medical retirement, requesting a transfer to a position where she could serve without killing. The armory assignment seemed perfect. For 2 years, she'd found peace in maintenance routines, satisfaction in problems solvable with proper tools and patience. But the medallion changed everything. Staff Sergeant Daphne Whitaker approached, settling into a chair beside Lila's workbench. "Cortez tells me you found interesting wear patterns on that Barrett." Lila continued working, not trusting herself to meet Whitaker's eyes directly. The staff sergeant had 18 years of experience and possessed institutional knowledge that made conversations feel like interrogations. "Nothing unusual," Lila replied carefully, "just signs of harder use than paperwork suggests." Whitaker picked up a clean component, examining it with knowledgeable eyes. "You know, Monroe, I've seen enough weapons to recognize certain wear patterns. This bolt carrier shows sustained firing that only happens in specific circumstances." The observation hung between them like an unasked question. "Combat weapons show different wear than training rifles," Lila replied. "Maybe this one saw overseas action before ending up here." Whitaker set the component down with deliberate precision. "According to records, this rifle never left the continental U.S. Makes me wonder about all that desert sand you mentioned." Lila felt cold weight settling in her stomach. Whitaker was building towards something, accumulating details that might eventually add up to dangerous conclusions. "Records aren't always complete," Lila said, finishing the Barrett's trigger installation. Whitaker leaned back, studying Lila with patient attention. "True enough, but what interests me is your familiarity with this weapon system. Most techs need manuals to service a Barrett properly. You've been working like you've done this 1,000 times." The observation was accurate and dangerous. Lila had indeed serviced Barrett rifles hundreds of times, but that experience was supposed to be invisible. "I've always been interested in learning different systems. The Barrett's fascinating engineering." Whitaker smiled without warmth. "Fascinating indeed. This isn't a weapon for general infantry use, Monroe. It's specialized for specific applications, requiring extensive training to use effectively." The implications were becoming impossible to ignore. Whitaker was stating her suspicion that Lila's background included precision rifle experience beyond basic maintenance. Lila closed her cleaning kit, ensuring the medallion was secure. "The Barrett's ready for tomorrow's demonstration. Full function testing complete." Whitaker nodded slowly. Excellent work, Monroe. As always, your attention to detail is exactly what we need. After Whitaker left, Lila stared at the perfectly maintained Barrett M107. The rifle represented the intersection of her past and her present, equipment bridging who she'd been and who she was trying to become. The next morning brought unusual activity as technicians prepared for the day's demonstration. VIP visitors would witness impressive accuracy displays without comprehending the years of training required for such results. Monroe, perfect timing. I need final checks on the Barrett, then stick around. The brass wants technical support standing by. Lila performed the requested checks with mechanical precision, but found herself thinking about the demonstration differently. The visitors would see impressive displays, but wouldn't understand the subtle factors determining whether capabilities could be fully realized. Staff Sergeant Whitaker appeared, carrying a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone dealing with last-minute complications. "Monroe, we got a problem. Our designated marksman came down with food poisoning. I need a replacement who can handle the Barrett confidently enough to impress these visitors." Lila felt something shift in her chest, a stirring of possibilities she'd been suppressing for 2 years. She knew exactly who should be behind that rifle. Lila felt the weight of decision settling around her. 2 years of maintained anonymity was about to end. She reached into her cleaning kit, fingers finding the medallion. With deliberate movements, she placed it on the workbench between them. Whitaker looked down, her eyes widening as she read the inscription. 318 confirmed eliminations. The crosshair symbol, the level of craftsmanship indicating official recognition from organizations that didn't officially exist. When she looked back up, her expression had shifted to something approaching awe. "Task Force Wraith," Whitaker whispered, recognizing the symbol. "You're one of the ghosts." I nodded once. Past tense. I've been out of active operations for 2 years. Whitaker picked up the medallion with reverent care. As an 18-year veteran, she'd heard whispers about Task Force Wraith, specialists operating outside normal structures to handle problems that require extreme precision. 318 confirmed eliminations, Whitaker read out loud, barely audible. That's not just experience, Monroe. That's mastery most people can't comprehend. Lila took the medallion back. It's also why I transferred out. Some numbers become too heavy to carry. Whitaker understood immediately. She'd seen enough veterans to recognize someone pushed to psychological limits by their specialty's demands. But the skills remain intact, Whitaker said. The skills remain intact. Muscle memory doesn't fade and technical knowledge stays current. Whitaker glanced around, ensuring privacy. "Monroe, I have to ask directly. Are you willing and able to handle the Barrett demonstration, confident you can showcase its capabilities impressively?" I considered the question from multiple angles. "Consider it handled." Whitaker paused. "I have to ask, why now? Why expose your background for this situation?" I considered carefully. My motivations were complex. Frustration at watching potentially inferior marksmanship, but also a deeper need to prove my skills remained intact. I said, finally, "Because this unit deserves representation by the best available capability, and because I need to know whether I can still do what I used to do." The demonstration proceeded flawlessly. Lila's first shot at 600 meters struck dead center with metallic authority that rang across the range. The second target, at 900 meters, exploded in spectacular fashion.
Her final shot at 1,200 meters found its mark with devastating precision as the .50 caliber projectile struck with authority that left no doubt about the weapon's capabilities. The visiting dignitaries discussed what they'd witnessed with animated enthusiasm, suggesting genuine impression with the demonstration's effectiveness. But Lila knew her 2 years of anonymity were definitively over. The medallion in her kit represented more than past achievements. It was a reminder that some responsibilities transcended personal preferences. She had developed capabilities few people possessed, and those capabilities carried obligations that didn't disappear because she wanted a different life. As evenings settled over Camp Harrison, Lila completed post-demonstration paperwork, knowing nothing would be normal about her situation going forward. Today that changed everything, revealing truths hidden for 2 years and setting consequences in motion she couldn't predict. The quiet armory technician who'd reported that morning no longer existed. In her place was someone whose capabilities had been recognized, whose background would now receive scrutiny that might reshape her future. Her medallion lay in its case, no longer a secret burden, but acknowledgement of skills that remained sharp as the day they were earned. 318 confirmed eliminations represented expertise the world still needed, even if she'd been trying to walk away from its demands.